Back to another video on the Python series. So before we move on to any particular lecture in terms of the notebooks, before we move on to the Jupyter Notebook, you can see that I have my terminal open here. Now the reason for that is I want to show you guys how you can use IPython to write Python code in your terminal, whether on Mac, PC, whatever it is. So how you call this IPython kind of interactive mode on your terminal is just, all you have to do is just write IPython. And then you see here you have line 1. So basically, it's really cool that in your terminal you can just write Python code. You can write, for example, arithmetic 98 gives you that output. You can also, for example, write print I like the color blue, for example. There you go. So basically you can see that you can just do Python code without the Jupyter Notebook just on your terminal, which is pretty neat. So I just wanted to show you guys that kind of component of Python and something that you can do if you want to, of course, using your terminal, just your terminal. But of course, this lecture we're going to be going over regular expressions in Python. So with that being said, let's hop on to the Jupyter Notebook. As you can see, we are back in the Jupyter Notebook from the terminal. So the whole concept of this lecture is going to be on regular expressions. So if you're not familiar with that, basically what we're going to do is that we have a string of values. So it has letters, or for example, we have digits of values or numbers. And we're going to be using certain special syntax like \w or \d to decode that message. So if you're not familiar with this, that's okay, because of course we're going to go over this, and as we move on, it's going to make more sense and you'll see the output. But basically, just for now, if you're not familiar, just keep this in mind that we're going to decode a string message, or again, it could be digits, but for this lecture, we're just going to be decoding a string. So the very first thing we need to do, as always, is to import the RE library. So let's do that. Import RE. And then we need to write the decoded message in terms of alphanumeric, which is the \w or \d, but we're going to be using letters, so we're going to just be using the \w. But of course, before we do that, we need a string of value, right? A string, essentially. So let's say my string is equal to color blue. All right. So since we have that, now we can actually use the special syntaxes or the \w. So, and then let's just set a variable name to that decoded value. So we'll just put color is equal to, and keep in mind the syntax and the way I'm going to write this out. So I'll be using R quotation mark. And then since we have four letters, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters, excuse me, we'll be using \w 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you can do that, but also there is even a more compact method that you can do to kind of make this more simpler. So since we had \w 5 times, which accommodated 5 letters of the word color, we can just do this. We can do \w braces enter 5. So you can see here that of course that 5 inside those braces just means that we're using 5 letters, which means using \w 5 times. And then since we have blue, which is 4 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can do \w braces 4. There you go. And I need to use end quotations. All right. So let's kind of just analyze this for a second. So the R quotation mark, that's just a special syntax of a regular expression of being decoded. And then we have \w, which represents our letters. And then we have 5 in this kind of braces format to represent 5 letters of the word color. And the same thing goes for the word blue, which just means that we have alphanumeric representing the letters. And then 4 in the braces just means that blue has 4 letters. All right, awesome. So we have that in place. Now the next thing we need to do is that we want to pass this kind of special syntax, this color variable, into the re.search or the .search method. So we're going to do re.search and then color. That's the decoded, or it's going to be the way we decode this string. And then since we're using the alphanumeric and all of this to decode the color blue, we're going to use it to, of course, decode the string. So We pass that in. And then of course, as always, let's just set a variable name to this to make things more easier. So let's just write out blue is equal to re.search. Awesome. Now we have that in place, but how are we going to get out the output, the string color blue, using this kind of special syntax that we had there? So since we had blue as our variable name, all we do now is blue.group, the .group method, and there you go. We have that output color blue. So all of this is just using the decoded kind of string, or using kind of this special syntax to decode this string color blue using these kind of alphanumerics, these \w kind of syntax letters here. So it's kind of cool. It's pretty neat. Again, this is kind of cool to just decode messages if you want. Create a program that decodes message essentially. And again, there are various ways you can do this. You can use, alphanumerics to represent strings of values, and you can also use digits too. So it's not just limited in terms of just letters. But now I want to move on to another method of doing this. We can also use the re.compile method as well. So what we do is we can set re.compile, and then we can pass this in if you want. Because all the re.compile or the compile method does is that it's going to basically take in this information, use this kind of decoded style of syntax to then we're going to pass in that string color blue. So it's basically going to compile all this, in other words. Now, I already did that, so we put those decoded values within the re.compile method, so we did that right. And as always, let's set a variable name to that, color2. All right, now all we do again is just use that re.search method, the search method, to pass in that compile, which we set to the variable color2. So let's do re.search, and then the color2, which was just this re.compile, and then we pass in what we want to, of course, decode, which was this string color blue, correct? So we pass that in. And then you can see here that something I didn't mention beforehand, and I should have done this first, but you can see the first thing it does, if we just don't use any methods or any groups to represent this color blue value, it gives you the span, which is basically the amount of characters, the amount of letters, including spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as you can see. And then it's a match, and that's going to be our output color blue. So even without just using, because the next thing we would have done was, if we use a variable name and we use that .group method, .group, it would give that color blue out. But if I keep that re.search by itself, this is what it gives out. And even if we look back into this part here, even if I deleted that blue.group here in that blue variable, it would do the same. So either way, you can not include more variables in the .group method, but if you just use the re.search, purely just re.search by itself, including those, of course, variable names that we determine, it's going to give you the span, which is the amount of characters in total, numbers of letters, including spaces, as well as the output that you are going to be decoding. So again, there are two main methods you can do this if you want. You can just use the re.search or use variable names to just get this value out, the whole output, the decoded output. All right, awesome. Now, for the last part of this lecture, we're going to use kind of more complex syntax. I'm sorry. We're going to use basically kind of this format, which is the same thing. We have R and then the quotations, but then we have brackets, and then we pass in the kind of, if it's a number, a digit, we pass in that into the brackets, and then we use this plus symbol, and this plus symbol means that this, for example, we have \w will occur more than one time. So let's go over this. So let's say my color 3 is equal to R, and then since we had strings again, we can use that \w, correct? \w, and then that occurred more than once, correct? Because we had \w 5 times for the word color, and then we had \w 4 times for the color blue. So just to make that more simplified, we can use the plus symbol. And let me delete one quotation there. Awesome. Now we can, again, I set a variable name to all of this, which I did. Now, all we do now is, if you want to, you can use the re.FINDALL method to pass in, of course, the text or numbers that will be decoded, and it will give you the output in this format. So find all, re.FINDALL, and then we pass in that color3 variable, which will decode the string that we had, which was color blue. And then if we look at the output, it gives it in certain characters, or basically in, I guess you could say, it gives you in groups of words, essentially. That's what I wanted to say. So as you can see here, the re.FINDALL method is a little bit distinct than, let's say, the re.search, or if you use the .group method. But all it does is that you can pass in the special syntax and the string that you're decoding to get everything in terms of, I guess, tuples or groups of words. So just a recap of everything we learned. So you could see here that we had the string defined. We had the string defined along with kind of the syntax we had here. The syntax was just going to decode that string value that we had determined. And then we use the re.search method. We use the re.group method. It's not there. Of course, we used a different method than that. I deleted it, but again, we had the re.search method, we had the re.group, as well as the re.FINDALL. And again, it's all important to recognize the syntax of regular expressions. When you want to decode the expression, you can use \w, \d, of course. There are various ways you can write this out, but the two main methods I wanted you guys to recognize here is that you can write in terms of our quotation and then \w, with braces to indicate how many words or letters there were. And then we can also utilize kind of this bracket format, passing in that, was it the \w, was it letters, numbers, or digits? And then also indicating how many times that occurred, which was more than one time with the plus symbol. And then, of course, we went over a couple of methods, which is findall, .search, and .group. But with that being said, thank you so much, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, this lecture as well. I hope it was pretty insightful in terms of how to decode message and write a program that could decode messages. And I hope it was neat. And I will see you guys, of course, as always, in a future video.